thank you so much for joining us, and welcome. I know I can't see most of you, but I'm sending lots of well wishes across the airwaves, and I hope you're all doing as well as can be. So next slide, please, Nick. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Rebecca, and I work with Alex Whedon in the SME development team at the Connected Places Catapult. During these very difficult times, please know that the Catapult is here for you, both practically in offering business support and also as a shoulder to cry on. So connection cafes, as you probably do know, are traditionally run as face-to-face events, which provides a great opportunity for our SME community to meet each other and to form new friendships and to learn about the challenges currently being faced by large businesses within the ecosystem. Our remote version of Connections Cafe, today's event, is designed to offer exactly the same thing, and I will facilitate introductions where I can. So if you do want to ask any questions or link up with anyone who's attended today after the event, please do let me know and I will introduce you. So some quick housekeeping before we begin. During today's Connections Cafe, your microphone will be muted and your video will be disabled, so please do refrain from turning these on. As I've already mentioned, throughout the webinar, you will have the opportunity to ask questions of any of our speakers using the chat function, which is located on the Zoom toolbar at the bottom of the screen. So moving on to the screen, timings wise, we're expected to finish at about 11 o'clock. And as you can see, we've got some great speakers lined up for you. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker for the day, Ewan Parry from the Transport Research Laboratory, or TRL. Ewan is market lead for new mobility at TRL, and he provides a leading role in the development of TRL's connected and automated vehicles and mobility technology projects. So crucially, recently Ewan led the development of TRL's cooperative and automated mobility vision for the Smart Mobility Living Lab, London, which is a new real-world testbed for the automotive and mobility sectors. And that's what Ewan wants to talk to us about today.
Good morning, everybody. I hope you can hear me. Thank you very much for the introduction, Rebecca. As Rebecca says, I'm Ewan Parry, Market Lead for New Mobility at TRL. And I want to talk you through today the work that we've been doing to develop and build the Smart Mobility Living Lab in London, which is something that's been going on for a couple of years now, starting with a consultation from UK government around what test facilities are needed by the growing connected and automated mobility sector. And the feedback that both ourselves and colleagues within Automotive Council provided set the scene for what we now have as Testbed UK, a growing network across the country of both controlled, semi-controlled and real-world testbeds. And the Living Lab London is the real-world testbed for future mobility based within a complex urban environment. Now, the future of mobility is quite a big thing, so it potentially covers a very wide amount of ground. These testbeds were conceived really as test environments for primarily connected and automated mobility and the infrastructure that supports them, and that really has underpinned the thinking that we have put into developing this facility. We're also very much aware, particularly in today's environment, about the potential to support new use cases. So here we're thinking about shared economy and disruptors, as well as the tech companies and innovators that are generating these new technologies. But micromobility, active transport are things that I think city authorities have been looking at very carefully over some amount of time now, about how they can be used to take pressure away from mass transit modes, whilst also encouraging a more healthy approach to how we get around. And in today's environment, I think that that's as much of a concern and an opportunity as ever. This is about looking at personal mobility, as well as looking at the mobility of goods and deliveries within our cities. Both have significant challenges, and the way that we're able to use new technologies to demonstrate the use of those technologies and evaluate the impact and the benefit to society and to the city is a very significant part of what we're doing here. And ultimately, with our new technologies, we want to verify, we want to validate, and we want to approve with evidence-based procedures around the readiness of these technologies to enter these environments. So in creating the Smart Mobility Living Lab, we've really created a set of tools and facilities to help facilitate this in the future. From 2017, we've worked with a team of industry and public sector colleagues to create the vision for Smart Mobility Living Lab and to implement it. This has been, as I say, focused within London, within two different areas of London, within Greenwich and within the Olympic Park, both very complementary facilities, where we've been designing infrastructure, creating new vehicle technologies and platforms to enable testing and evaluation services. So this is a program that's been funded by Innovate UK in part through the Centre for Connected and Autonomous Vehicles, Innovate UK themselves, and supported and coordinated by Zenzik across the Testbed UK platform. Our partners, so this program was led by TRL, but we have a number of really important partners that have contributed significantly to development of this program, starting with Transport for London, clearly a really essential participant in a consortium that's developing thinking around new mobility in a city like London. Cisco, our industry lead, has provided much of the core infrastructure that's going to be underpinning our testbed, and Cubic have worked with us to develop a new form of ticketing system that we can apply to the tests and trials that we undertake within SMLL. We've had local government backing from our partners at DG Cities, part of the Royal Borough of Greenwich, and from London Legacy Development Corporation, who are responsible for Olympic Park. And we've also worked with academia, with our colleagues at Loughborough University, and particularly their London campus based at Queen Elizabeth Park as well. So what are we building? Well, we're building, and we have built the large proportion of this testbed already. This is including 24 kilometres of routes within Greenwich and Queen Elizabeth Park across London, encompassing many different types of road environment that create different challenges, different use cases for whether it be connected systems, whether it be automated systems, or whether it be a combination of the two, looking at how technologies work together to accelerate the potential of these technologies to offer new solutions to the mobility challenges that I outlined before. Underpinning the network, we have 20 kilometres of new fibre we've put in the ground, and these are connecting over 200 specific monitoring points, 200 columns that either were pre-existing, we've installed equipment on lampposts. In some cases, we've had to reinstall those lampposts to ensure they're strong enough to take the kit that we put on them. But by going through this process, we have established planning, so we're able to put new equipment into the field, rapidly test it, power it with things like power over Ethernet, and plug and play equipment very, very readily. We have over 273 high definition cameras, which we're able to take visual feeds from and process that in order to give us data from the field. And then 32 sites of connected V2X. systems currently operating DSRC, but we also have an extending or expanding, should I say, 5G network within SML supported by Telefonica. So if we look at our locations across the network, these are the larger picture here is showing Greenwich, and the picture at the left-hand side, top left, is showing Olympic Park. And these are giving us an indication of the distribution and the different types of road environment our 200 equipment locations are spread across. With the total distance within these areas, we have 18 kilometres of network within Greenwich and 6 kilometres of network within Queen Elizabeth Park. And between those two areas, within Greenwich, we have quite an established, mature roads environments, many different types of residential locations, but also retail and urban distributor dual carriageway type roads. Whereas in Olympic Park, we have a much fresher, much newer new built development with a real growing community in those areas with unique use cases to be addressed as well. And then if we look at a little bit more detail across those sites, we've undertaken quite extensive audits of these locations to ensure that the sites that we've selected for our equipment are quite complementary in terms of providing routes with lower complexity and routes with higher complexity. We really want to be able to challenge, particularly when it comes to automated systems and trialing the ability of those technologies to deal with different types of road environments. Clearly, we need to be able to challenge with multiple different types of facilities. So we've very heavily audited these sites and are able to really tune the locations at which we undertake particular trials to the challenges that are being addressed by a particular type of innovation or the readiness of a particular technology to start being deployed within a particular type of environment. So what do some of these things look like? Well, I mentioned that we are creating this plug and play capability for our infrastructure, and that's sitting alongside the fixed infrastructure locations which are hosting cameras, Wi-Fi access points, the ITS G5 DSRC V2X capability as well. So we were able to use that infrastructure to capture data from the real world, to enable new trials, to communicate data from remote sensors that are installed at these locations, and quickly and easily power them and connect them to our data network. And this is all supported by an expanding 5G network as well. As I mentioned, our partners at Telefonica, who are growing this network that is going to be supporting the testbed as well. So as that grows, we have a phase 1 installation right now, you may have seen on the previous graph. And that installation within Greenwich will be enabling us to compare, for example, the performance of ITS G5 V2X, vehicle to anything communication, with the similar sort of service enabled by 5G cellular V2X. So those sorts of trials are going to be really important to understanding how best these technologies can fit in and enable, support the development of our mobility systems in the future. Alongside that, we're developing our own automated vehicles, running open source platforms such as AutoWare. We undertook a trial with our automated vehicle late last year. And this is really intended as a platform that can again support additional technologies which innovators are looking to deploy into environments, but without having to create that automated vehicle technology themselves. We're taking data feeds from our equipment in the fields and running real visual analytics on that data to mine information, but also to support our mobility service testing as well, where we're looking to create evidence of performance in the real world. And it's ultimately that evidence that's going to be providing the information that's needed by regulators, approvers of the deployment of new technologies for new use cases. Insurers and fleets are all going to want reassurance about how systems perform in the real world. We're taking the challenge also of looking at new ways to validate these technologies using both the digital test bed that we've created from our BIM model, our building information model, as we've created this facility, but also the connecting that to our real world environment as well. And then behind all of that, we have our physical facilities, so officing, workshops, secure parking, all those practical things that are required to help support these quite complex trials in the real world. And that's including our control rooms, of which we have two based at our offices in Woolwich, in Greenwich, and also our offices at Plexel, the Innovation Centre in Queen Elizabeth Park. So one of the quick key things that I want to leave you with before I hand back over to the team is how to engage with us. You'll have my contact details on the next screen, but really I want to emphasize that Smart Mobility Living Lab has been built as a support facility for R&D, and that's both R&D from a private perspective, open access to any businesses that want to engage, but run on a strictly private and confidential testing basis for private R&D. But we're also enabling collaborative programs as well. And those collaborative programs, such as the rounds of Innovate UK CAV funding, we're supporting consortia to use our facilities, and certainly those programs are encouraging the use of Testbed UK facilities in the development of future programs. So we're really open, really want to support those things as well. We've established an innovation community as well, and this is a growing community of SMEs and larger businesses, really with a combined joint interest in future mobility and the technologies that are going to enable that, and really looking to make things happen in the real world, and that can be done by working with Smart Mobility Living Lab. But also there's an opportunity to help us by contributing to the facilities that we're creating. If you think you have data or software, hardware services that you can provide, then we're always looking to expand the capability of SML as well. These are my contact details. Please do take note of them and reach out directly to me, or have a look on our website, www.smartmobility.london, for more information. And I look forward to hearing from you. If you've got any questions, I'd be very happy to answer them now.
Thanks, Ewan, that's fantastic. Actually, I have a question, if that's okay. You mentioned that you provide support for collaborative R&D projects. So to what extent would you help an SME, or would you support an SME who was thinking of applying for an Innovate UK Smart grant, for example? Would you provide sort of bid writing support, or is it just more about bringing a consortium together?
Well, we're doing a bit of that right now, actually. We're working with two different SMEs on smart grant proposals that would use the infrastructure within SML and the services. So we're absolutely working with those organisations in terms of getting the proposals right, and also the partnerships that we could be put into place, whether it's advisory group or whether it's partners that would participate in a programme, to make that as strong a proposal as possible. So absolutely, if those are routes that organisations are looking to go down, we're certainly very keen to engage and support that.
Great, thank you. So I know obviously the Innovate UK Smart Grants, taking that as an example, the competition is incredibly high, and the success rate is something like 4%. So it is helped dramatically if you can have the support of an organisation such as TRL or the Catapult, or somebody with the expertise in the market to actually help drive that application forward. So yeah, it's really important. So thank you so much. Does anybody in the community have a question? If you do, you can use the Zoom chat function now. Can't see any, but if you do have any questions for Ewan after the event, please do feel free to get in touch. Thank you, Ewan. Okay,
no problem.
So now, could I please introduce our next speaker? Really delighted to welcome Ben Fulser from KPMG. Ben is a director in KPMG's infrastructure group, and actually leads the Future of Mobility team. So today he'll be talking about identifying and targeting the right areas within transport, and how to hone your sales pitch to appeal to potential customers and collaborators. Ben, over to you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, you can hear me. Great. Fantastic. So thank you for the introduction and for the invitation to participate in today's session. As Rebecca said, we have a team within KPMG, Future Mobility team, that works with both public and private sector organisations on a wide range of projects, ranging from strategy and work supporting development of target operating models, business models, value propositions, all the way through. I'll just be asked to start my video. There we go. Hope you can now see me. All the way through to actually helping on delivery programs. So that includes connecting SMEs with investors, running funding rounds and M&A projects. So that, for example, we supported Maz Global on its Series C funding round and Tenzing's acquisition of Ticketer. We've also supported acquisitions of charge point operators and work helping a number of SMEs with their business models. But it also includes working with SMEs to deliver solutions to clients. So a good example of that would be the Department for Transport's Bus Open Data Service, where we're working with Ito World to deliver that portal for all of the bus information. And we've got other examples working in other sectors where KPMG will act as the integrator and working with a number of SMEs to deliver solutions. So over the next few minutes, I'm going to talk through our views on hot areas in mobility, both globally and in the UK, and how to develop a very tight go-to-market strategy, and then preparing the sales story. So that's both selling your product to your customers, but also selling potentially your company to investors and funders and financiers to be able to scale and continue growing. So starting with the hot areas, if we follow the principle of following the money, it's interesting to see that whilst there has been growth across the board, there are clearly hotter areas than others, and that shouldn't be particularly surprising. But also there are differences in the proportionality of investment globally as compared to the UK. This reflects the market context within the UK and the comparative maturity of the sectors. So we actually explore this more in detail together with the differences in investor types in the UK compared to more broadly globally in a report. I'm shameless advertising and marketing here, but this particularly glossy dossier, The Future of Mobility, which is solving the investment challenge. CPC has a copy, but also you're more than welcome to email me afterwards if you'd like a copy, or it's on our website. So in the UK, with a particularly service-heavy and service-orientated market, it's not surprising to see that proportionally, most investment has gone into insurance, rental and leasing, intelligent mobility, which includes mobility as a service, and aftermarket. However, with the UK's net zero agenda, we're also seeing extensive investment now into charging and alternative fuels. We're also, interestingly, seeing more investment into AV software, fleet management, telematics, cybersecurity, and last mile logistics. The latter, of course, particularly interesting in the current climate with COVID. And we're starting to see some interesting changes in business models, but also further investment. Interesting, I was talking to a rental and leasing company the other day who'd said, unsurprisingly, the rental market for cars has dropped off completely, but actually we're running hotter than ever on vans and lorries. And we're starting to see work with SMEs to develop some innovative models to enable the availability of that fleet to remain at 99.5%. So that's looking at things like telematics and aftermarket. So clearly within the UK market, it's slightly different to the global market, but we are starting to see some of the more IT and product lines coming through in the sectors. Clearly, the most important thing for any business to do is to have a robust go-to-market strategy. And as part of our wider 9 levers of value framework for building successful operating models for businesses, we consider the markets that should be targeted and could be targeted, the brand and value propositions being taken to those markets, the clients that sit within those markets, and the channels that should be used to reach those clients. I'm not going to go through all the materials on the slide. I'll definitely go over my 10 minutes if I do so, but I did want to call out a few key considerations that are pervasive in our engagements as a team with SMEs. So we've already talked about identifying the emerging market sectors, but an area which is typically weaker in SMEs is truly understanding competitive position. Many SMEs invested heavily, both financially and personally, in their businesses and solutions. And I don't want to appear too blunt, but that typically sometimes means that you will be more blinkered to the competitive position and the ecosystem around you. And that makes it more difficult to articulate a competitive advantage. And I've seen this in a number of investor packs, and where we typically see our product position top right in that wonderful magic quadrant, because we've invested so much time in it, and the analysis of the market and competitive position of others isn't anywhere near as robust as it needs to be, and what investors will expect to see. But it's not just about an investor story there, it's about your sales story into your clients. So why is your product, why is your solution the most important, the better thing? What makes it differentiated? Having a mix of products and services is also key. Maybe not initially, clearly, when you're developing your initial concepts and prototypes and pilots, but this should definitely be part of the medium to longer term strategy, providing resilience in revenues and profitability through diversity of those products and or services. Pricing strategies are difficult. That goes without saying. And we've seen problems at both ends of the spectrum. We've seen businesses which overvalue and overprice their solutions, and good examples would be aggregators of data who think the additionality of the aggregation creates a price premium, which then makes it very difficult to sell into the market. But we've also seen examples at the other end of the spectrum, with companies so keen to sell their product they actually set precedent for the pricing, and therefore creating expectations with their clients that there'll always be that rock bottom price. So getting that right strategy is crucial. And then that leads into improving the profit per customer. This doesn't necessarily mean racking up pricing, but rather considering the mix of products and or services you're selling into your clients, looking for those opportunities for perennial or as you sleep income, and optimizing cost in the services that you're delivering. And finally, companies really do need to be one step ahead of innovation at their customers, preempting the evolving customer needs, and really understanding the key objectives for their customers, which neatly brings us on to the key ingredients within the sales story. Again, I'm not going to go through all of these, but in general, there are 5 key areas which are pervasive in the way that you sell to clients, whether you're selling to government and or private sector. I mean, clearly the mix will change depending on the client type you're selling to. I would like to focus on innovation, and I think the top element there is really critical, which is being problem and not solution focused. Your solution really is only the right one if it addresses a client's problem. It's not necessarily going to always be the right solution. And then thinking about the next problem, how to continuously improve your solution, and that goes back to the point I was raising earlier. Clients really do rarely want to invest in a solution that's going to rapidly be out of date, or to work with suppliers that are unimaginative and not proactive. And the other element here is quite an interesting one, which we've seen emerge quite a lot in the last 2 years, which is demonstrate the ability to co-create with your clients and supply chain partners and adopt new and innovative commercial models. The typical commercial model of I own the IP, and you will pay me for it, is changing. We're seeing, especially in Crown Commercial and government wanting to take more IP. That's not necessarily the right solution. There has to be an innovative model that is developed there. But we've also seen co-creation models, and a good example in the US at the moment with the MAS platform, where we're seeing co-creation with the Transport Authority and 3 different partners, and an interesting IP sharing model. Scalability is also really critical. Demonstrating that you've got scalable operations and a technology platform as you go to enable you to go through that process from minimum viable product into scaled solution, and not fall into that trough of whatever we call it, where everything goes to die after minimum viable product or POC. And that requires strong supply chain and partner relationships. Access to opportunities, definitely invest in joining frameworks, especially in large multi-client frameworks like Digital Outcome Service 4. And establish relationships with intermediaries, accelerators like the CPC and integrators. The reason we're able to bring SMEs into the mix where we do delivery projects for our clients is because those SMEs have reached out to us and said, look, we think we can help your clients. Prior performance is really, really key. Having a strong management team with experience and track record is critical, and that will shine through when you're pitching and bidding for work. But also client references, focusing on delivering excellence in all the work and securing those client references. And then finally, I suppose, good governance. Again, it goes without saying, but to get through a lot of the pre-qualification processes, you'll need to be able to demonstrate all of these capabilities. Policies are key. I know it's always seen as a bit of a cost item, but actually having those policies in place, anti-bribery and corruption, investment decisions, know your client, sales qualification processes are really critical. And also getting those relevant industry certifications, so you're not snookered when you come to putting in a bid and the bid says you need ISO 27001, or you need relevant insurances or clearances for your staff if you're working with a government body. And it's not too dissimilar if we think about the investment story, the Investorbility, getting funding or financing to support scaling. Having a clear strategy and differentiation is critical, and we've already talked a lot about that earlier in the presentation. But scalability, again, really important, and demonstrate that you have the capability to scale at the infrastructure level, at the staffing level, and at the services level. Think about future opportunities. Building pipelines is really critical, and it goes back to my point about diversity of products and services. It can't just be a one-trick pony necessarily, and I think it's really important to think about how you're going to broaden out and create both that pipeline to create growth, but also resilience in profitability. And management, absolutely critical. Strong management team who have a good grasp of running their business. And that means the financials, but it also means the staffing. It means the skills, the capabilities, the supply chain relationships. So just to conclude really in terms of the Investorbility piece, for those SMEs amongst you who are looking for investment, either that be financing or funding with some form of investment from an external party, these are 5 key areas where we think, which we think are critical, and where we typically see our supporting clients through this process. So, first one, data analytics is absolutely critical. Be able to unpick and demonstrate that you understand financial performance and you have strong KPIs, and these are typically a combination of both leading and lagging indicators. So lagging, how have I done, but leading, how am I going to do, and where are the risk points. Prepare well to maintain momentum through the deal process, whether that be getting financing or funding. So this is about maintaining the momentum so that you don't just sort of sluggishly proceed, because that might turn off bank or a funder. Clearly, good news is important, and thinking about this before you go into any deal, whether that be again bank or funder, is critical. So develop your business plan, stress test it, put it through different scenarios. we've already talked about solid infrastructure, but it's critical. I mean, the number of businesses that we work with, when we did some due diligence for a bank, for example, on an SME business, and they said, product's great, management team are great, is the business itself resilient? And the answer was no. They're going to have to spend a lot of money actually getting the infrastructure, and that's not just the IT infrastructure, it's policies, procedures, etc. in place. So get that in place proactively, and then make time to invest in this. Don't just say you should invest in us because we're great and the product's great. Actually dedicate some time to supporting that. So to wrap up, we've talked about where are the hot areas in mobility that we're seeing at the moment, and the growth areas in the UK. How do you think about your go-to-market strategy, and where are the key elements of that? What are the key ingredients for selling to clients and being proactive and prepared to be able to sell to the market? And then if we're looking for financing and funding opportunities, where are the key opportunities? Also, what are the key things we need to consider with respect to preparing our businesses and preparing ourselves for that investment? If there's any questions, please don't hesitate to ask now and or drop me a note. My contact details are here. As I said, we've got a number of people in our team working in this area, and be very, very happy to pick up with you at any time.
Lovely, thank you so much, Ben. That was so insightful. I was about to hurry you along a little bit, but you were offering such amazing insights. I didn't want you to stop, but that was incredibly interesting and helpful. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Ben? I haven't got any on the chat. Are you happy, Ben, for people to email you directly? I mean, I know you've obviously put your email address there. Would that be okay? Maybe you could distribute it to your team?
Yep, absolutely, please do.
Great, thank you so much. That's amazing. And if anyone does have any some further questions after, then please just let me know, or obviously Ben. Yeah, lovely, thank you.
Thank you.
Ewan, are you still with us? Can I ask a question, please?
Yep, I'm here.
Hello. We've had a question come in from our friend Eric Thomason, who works at the University of Leeds in their research and innovation function. Eric was wondering if TRL are considering partnering with the University of Leeds and specifically their simulation capability to combine real world and virtual research.
Well, absolutely. We're always interested in new partnerships and the whole combination between the virtual testing and the real world testing, which is really going to underpin, I think, our journey towards getting approvals and evidence to demonstrate that these technologies are ready for real world. It's going to be a huge part of that, and really one of the reasons why we've developed SML in the way that we have. So yeah, really keen to have that conversation. We've already built a form of digital twin based on our BIM model of the entire 24 kilometers. So if there's new ways that we can use that working with partners, then absolutely. And I've messaged Eric separately as well, so we're all good.
Fantastic, thank you so much. Great. Okay, so before I move on to the SME pitches, we've had a query in from a student who is currently studying at the University of Liverpool in London. Who wouldn't mind volunteering to take part in his user-centered. So if anybody feels like doing something kind for them, please do let me know, and I will be happy to share his details. Okay, so moving on to the highlights of the event. We have our SME speed pitches. So from humanising autonomy, prior to government affairs and corporate research divisions, both in the US and Germany. Primarily, she partnerships and policy coordination. And she thanks, Paddy.
Thanks, Rebecca. I hope everyone heard that, but it's all right. It was just about the past. I'm here to talk about what I do at Humanizing Autonomy and what we stand for as a company. So we're an SME based in London. Most of us are actually scattered across the world currently, working from home. But I'm going to start with telling you about what we do in our mission and vision. So we see a world in which the value of automated systems is measured by how well they promote the safety and happiness of human beings. So you're going to hear me talk a lot about human beings, and more specifically, vulnerable road users. So for us, vulnerable road users are pedestrians, cyclists, persons with disabilities, or anyone that's not inside a vehicle. And that's going to be really interesting. And the question, of course, is how do we do that and why is it relevant? And so what we've done at Humanizing Autonomy is we've developed a real-time human intent prediction platform. So you use camera footage, and that can be captured from mobile or dashboard cameras inside vehicles, or from static cameras such as CCTV and infrastructure cameras. And we understand, and you do this all the time as a human being, either as a driver or as a pedestrian or cyclist yourself, you understand what people are going to do based on their behavior and their intent. And that is what our software is able to recognize, understand, and predict. So when are you going to cross the road? When is your intent to cross the street? And we use that information, relay it to the vehicles, so either for autonomous vehicles or driver assist and other applications. And I'll talk about that in a slide. But we also here talk about being hardware agnostic. So we can integrate with almost any camera system existing out there today. We do not need any additional hardware installations, which is a very big benefit, especially when we're talking about some of the COVID analysis that we're doing. We'll talk about that later on. So we see cities and in urban landscapes where you have a lot of vulnerable users as the key playground where we can deploy. And you see a lot of different applications. So of course, we have the autonomous pod or shuttles. That's what we're aiming for. But it's also about commercial fleets. So as driver assist technology, we can understand and optimize, for example, routes. We're doing that today in our Transport for London projects. We're part of the Freight Lab Challenge that was announced a couple of weeks ago. We're also looking at bus safety innovation challenges with Transport for London. So understanding that this is not just for one type of vehicle and it's not just for autonomous vehicles, but we can integrate today and increase safety. And this is how we're changing kind of how urban mobility is designed around vulnerable road users and human beings, not just around the vehicles. You see a lot of visuals today coming from companies, and it's great and has a lot of future kind of implications, but there's a lack of understanding how those mobility concepts are going to increase safety. And that's what we're trying to do. We're also then talking about here the V2X intelligent infrastructure. So as I mentioned, connecting with CCTV, testing real-time messaging capabilities. So understanding that if there's a lot of vulnerable road users, it's rush hour, when we think back to how it used to be, but it's going to increase back to that in the future, of course. Understanding that we can optimize routes for vehicles, we can do real-time messaging capabilities, last mile delivery. So that's obviously something that's also increasing in the current environment. But really understanding that all these things come together and can be designed around vulnerable road users. So why is our product so relevant? And it's of course the safety aspects and also efficiency though. So we understand that about 90% of VRU accidents can be reduced or avoided with our technology because it's about 2 seconds faster than the human driver and recognizing that risk. So it's about understanding you're going to step out into the road as pedestrian before you do. Of course, that's also then related to efficiency. So you don't want your vehicle stopping every time it thinks it's going to see someone crossing in front of it. So the false positive rate has to be extremely low, and that's what we're working on, and we're quite proud of our metrics in that area. And all these things, of course, they're relevant for ADAS, as it says, and autonomous vehicles. So that's something relevant. In terms of the product, I've mentioned that there's kind of two different pieces. There's Edge and Cloud. So Edge is also what I call kind of the live version. So it's what's integrated into the vehicle. It's that separate video or audio alert depending on the customer. So this is what the modularity is, that we can offer various pieces of the software. And you don't have to integrate the whole thing. With cloud, it's interesting looking at, and I call this more post-event, but we are analyzing footage captured throughout the day potentially, and then doing an analysis of what are the risky situations and events that occurred. So that can be from a CCTV or infrastructure camera, so looking at intersections, or then also fleet vehicles, commercial vehicles, using for driver education. So understanding in their routes, you're driving the same route every day. Can we optimize them because they're too unsafe for vulnerable road users? Also, then, of course, that gets back to efficiency. How fast can you deliver parcels? But you don't want that at the risk of the vulnerable road users around you. Then I've mentioned already the social distancing tool that we're developing as well. So this is not just about enforcing what is happening in terms of who's sticking to the 2 meters, but it's about truly understanding how vulnerable road users are using the infrastructure and how that's changing. We've all seen the increase of pedestrians and cyclists, which has been, of course, a great development. And cities are now starting to increase walkways, cycle highways, but we need to understand how people are using them. Are they walking along them? Are they exercising on sidewalks? That's a very different usage of infrastructure. We can do these kinds of things. Are people sitting in parks? What are they doing there? Of course, it's also then vehicle interiors. So how people are boarding public transportation in the future, how can we optimize that? Infrastructure is an interesting one also about how people are queuing at bus stops, for example. So how can we use that information also in real time to optimize public transportation scheduling? So do we need to deploy more buses? And as we're kind of seeing the easing of the lockdown, this is going to change over the next coming weeks. So it's important to start understanding how behaviors are changing today. Are people avoiding certain dwelling points? Are they, entering stations differently than they used to? And of course, we want to be able to test the effectiveness of different policies that municipalities are deploying, and we can do all those things. And then just a little bit, you've already heard about the Smart Mobility Living Lab. We're one of the SMEs that's partnered there. We are working closely with TRL and a lot of other international organizations. We understand that the software developing, of course, has to be ethical, and we're leading some of the discussions here in the UK on that with various organizations, also part of connected autonomous vehicle policy projects. So really understanding also the safety and standard mechanisms that have to be developed for these technologies today. Understanding that this is not something that we can do on our own, but it's going to require international collaborations to address these topics. And then to finish up, I've talked a lot about the we, so it's worth pointing out who the we are. As I mentioned, 25 people, usually sitting in London, now scattered across the world with backgrounds, industry and academia. And also worth mentioning that is a half female team, so across commercial, technical, and product. We're quite proud of that accomplishment, and we look to be growing in the future. And with that, that is all for me.
That's great. Thank you so much, Paddy. My internet is unstable, apparently, so I'm very sorry if I'm jittery. Are there any questions for Paddy? Doesn't look like it. If there are others, Paddy, I'll follow up with you afterwards, if that's okay.
That's great.
So, Daniel, is it all right just to hold fire for 2 seconds? Ben, can I bring you back, if that's okay?
Yeah, of course.
Thank you, that's great. Just very, very quickly, we've had a question from Robin Brownsell. He wants to know, in your view, what do you see the investor appetite being at the moment, given COVID-19, which you probably get asked all the time?
We do. I'm going to get my crystal ball out and just polish it off quickly. But it's a good question. I think clearly there are concerns at the moment, especially in our space, around where we're going to end up. And I'm specifically speaking around future mobility with demand and ultimate implications for patronage and revenues. I think it's interesting. Over the last 3 weeks, been keeping an eye on this, and some sectors have been slightly hotter than others. So actually, if anything, it's given a bit of a boost to the mobility as a service sector due to the mileage they've already made in integrated journey planning and information, and how that could be used for social distancing. So that's an interesting one. I think there will be things that are focused on regardless of COVID, and decarbonisation and zero emission mobility is one of those. So if anything, that's going to continue to be a hot topic, especially as we look to preserve the gains that we've made in things like air quality and active mobility. So my view on this is that I think there will be some areas that go off the boil a bit. It wouldn't surprise me if we see slightly less or withheld investment in things like automated mobility. But we actually see more in the decarbonisation space, personal mobility and mobility as a service.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. That's really helpful. I will let you go, Ben, for now.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thanks, Ben.
Please do carry on sending in your questions, everybody. It's really, really great to see you sort of taking part and engaging. Okay, Daniel. Daniel has a fleet of completely 100% electric delivery vehicles, and he believes in driving for success, not to accept what was, but what can be. And he really hopes what he is trying to create will have a lasting impression of the world. He's got quite an interesting story to tell. So Daniel, please take it away.
Good morning. Thank you for that introduction. That was lovely. I just want to say the previous presentations, I think they're really good. They're really valuable. And I've learned a few things from there as well. So I just wanted to say thank you for taking the time out to do that as well. So thank you very much. Again, LBC Logistics, it's something of a brainchild of mine that I started. The idea came about 2 years ago, roughly, but I'll get into that as we go further on. So the strap line is a greener way to deliver. Again, my contact details are there, should anyone want to get in contact or speak about anything, any questions that they may have as we go throughout it. So just a quick summary of us, just a company overview, what the problem is that we've identified, what we're doing about it, and what you need to start thinking about as individuals, as companies, as organizations as well. And then finally open for any questions that anyone may have. So just as an overview, so the company, oh, sorry, beg your pardon. So we're Live, Breathe, Clean Logistics Limited. So it's about helping the environment, creating a zero emission environment, which is what the government are trying to push forward as well. And we're starting to see the need for more of a greener solution. So companies are starting to see that they need to make a change. They need to look at alternatives. And they need to start future-proofing themselves in terms of an organisation, because a lot of customers now are becoming socially responsible. So they want to see more from their product, not just from buying that product, but also the end of that product. So how it gets to them as well, which is quite a good selling point for businesses as well. So we're in our second year now. We've been traded into our second year. We've had two. Hello. Oh, sorry. Someone stepped in there. We've had 2 successful rounds of funding as well, which is pretty good. As Rebecca said, our fleet is 100% electric. We're looking at developing the other side of things as well, so the bicycle couriers, that side of things. But I'm starting to see that it's a little bit. They're not offering the safety features that we would like to see. So we're developing that autonomy in terms of that. And we're also looking to protect that bicycle courier as well. So we're looking at more robust ideas around that. So I'd be quite keen to speak to some of the people that were in this presentation previous. Again, we offer same day, we offer next day. We offer final mile delivery solution as well. And we also do returns collections, which is practically the same thing, but you just go in the opposite direction. So far as a business, as a company, we've saved 15.2 tons of carbon emissions entering the atmosphere. I'm quite proud of that, because you need facts and figures to prove to people that it's actually working and doing well. And the fact that we've saved that going into the atmosphere is I'm quite proud of that. So I'm really proud of the guys for that as well. Again, just a few notable customers that we have, just to name a few that we deliver into. We're also looking at entering into the EV charging point installation industry as well. So we've developed a partnership with a charging point manufacturer, which is also a customer of ours as well. And they're looking to, again, do the final mile in a more cleaner, greener way, because it was just being delivered in diesel vans and petrol vans, which is something that they wanted to change and wanted to start to think about moving forward with. So again, what's the problem? A few of the guys led on to this earlier. So the petrol and diesel ban, which is currently for 2040, it will be shifted forward to 2035. Again, the government, the strategy, the net zero carbon emissions, it's a hot topic, as well as the current COVID issue that's going on at the moment. They're still looking for cleaner air and to get everything back the way it should be. A factors of the whole process is, I've found out that 40,000 people a year pass away through poor air quality as an issue, which I think shouldn't be happening. It shouldn't be an issue. It shouldn't, in this day and age, that shouldn't be an issue that's happening. So it's a personal mission for myself. My daughter was hospitalized with pneumonia, and I looked into the details. So the air particles and everything that go along with air pollution was a contributing factor to why she was getting it. She was only 1 at the time, so it was a bit of a scare, a bit of an issue that I thought something needs to be done. So that's a personal drive that I've looked to push forward with. Again, the industry is slow to react. They won't move forward unless they need to. I know this through working through big organisations, so big general merchandisers. I won't name the names, but you can see on my LinkedIn profile who it was that I used to work for. We also see from customers the bad reviews that we're seeing on Trustpilot from our competitors. And we're seeing damaged goods. You've only got to look online to see the videos that customers are posting up about parcels being thrown over the side, left in a garage or an open garage for it to get damaged. So for me, it's a good customer service point of view as well that I want to try to implement and get across. And then again, the issue is of the lack of EV infrastructure that we're noticing throughout the UK. So we had a customer that wanted a delivery to Carlisle, and the charging infrastructure wasn't great going up to there. So our driver had to stay over the night to get there and get back. So again, we're looking to solve that problem rather than moan about it. We're actually making a difference to trying to do something. So again, this leads me on to what we're doing about it. So as before, we're already working with the likes of Costa Coffee, Amazon, Mercedes, a few other companies and names. Again, we've saved 15.2 tons already enter into the atmosphere. So again, a huge proud moment for me. Again, we're offering huge savings to customers. So they're able to save on the ULEZ and LEZ charging zones, which equates to approximately £112 a day. So if a customer's got multiple drops going into London every single day, we're able to save that customer that money, which is a good selling point and a good saving for them, as well as being a greener solution. So we're looking to try to grow. We're not just looking for the UK, we're also looking into Europe as well. So we're looking at the possibility of Prague as a trial test bed. So we're just waiting to see on the outcome of everything that's going on at the moment. So that's sort of on hold at the minute. We've also got the driver app where we're able to send electronic PODs to customers, so proof of deliveries. And that's a great selling point for them because sometimes they're having to sign for something with physical paper. Obviously, that's not something that we want to do. So we want to make everything electronic, as paperless as possible. And then we've also moved in to get the certification of to enable us to install charging points with our partner. So we've got that certification. We're just going through the process to get the approval from the OLEV office. And that means that we'll be able to offer the charging points to customers. So to be that a business customer or a residential customer, to enable us to install the charging points and offer the warranty and everything that goes along with it as well. So things to consider or what you need to do. Thoughts of future-proofing your business are, I think, paramount, because I don't think this issue is going to go away. You need to think about the operational costs of vehicles that are going and changing and moving to a greener way. So why not possibly make that resolution now or resolve that now? Again, if you're already using a delivery service, you're going to need to look to find a greener solution, for me. So again, why not make that move now? And then again, the more EV charging points that are installed, it's easier for everybody. So if everyone moves to alternative fuel vehicles, it will enable people to get around with peace of mind. So what we found is the more infrastructure we have, the better it is to get around and more easier for everyone to be around. So that was just a quick overview of us and what we're about and what we're doing. Happy to answer any questions if anybody has any. But thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Daniel.
You're welcome.
Great. And we've got a question in the chat from Thomas.
Sure, yeah.
For bike delivery, is
Yes.
your risk concern exposure to air pollution or collision risk?
Very good question. So for me, it's about both, I would say.
I'm sorry,
Hello?
Nick,
okay.
yeah, thanks.
That's okay. It's not a problem. So for me, it's again about driver safety. So, and also, again, not exposing them to fumes that they don't need to be exposed to. So we're looking at an enclosed option. So again, it's sort of the framework of a vehicle, but the benefits of it being a bike and accessible to areas that a van might not necessarily be able to go down. So thank you very much for the question. I hope I answered it.
Thank you. So we've got another one from Jim, if that's okay. He was wondering what area you operate from and what is your average daily mileage. So sorry, that's two questions. And the third one is, do you have any issues with weight of?
So the vehicles, though, they are, the maximum weight that we can take is about 800 kilograms roughly. So again, it's too big.
A washing machine or
a little bit heavier than a washing machine. It's
big
about a very big washing machine. It's just under a ton, basically. 200 kilograms off a ton, so it's quite we can take quite a lot in those items. Back to your question of what was the first part of it, the challenges of going,
which area do you operate from, and
what is
your average mileage?
Sure.
daily?
So we're based in Milton Keynes. As I say, we're looking to expand throughout the country as well. We're looking at hotspots. We've identified 10 locations that we're looking to open in whatever facility we do that. And the other part of the question was what? Sorry, Rebecca. Beg your pardon.
The average daily mileage.
It's
you know
rough. Yeah, off the top of my head, it'll be roughly about 100 miles, roughly. Again, that varies. So with the likes of going to Carlisle or Scotland, which we have done, again down to Penzance as well. That obviously changes, but it just depends on the customer and what they want and where they need that item going to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I was just going to move on to the next speaker, but we have had a question that I think would be really valuable if you could possibly answer, Daniel. So it's from Tim.
Yeah.
And he asks what policy or industry challenges or maybe opportunities you've faced so far that your company and other SMEs could potentially learn from.
So what policies, what challenges, where, again, we're facing a lot of the challenges with the COVID issue that's going on. I've actually recovered from it as well. So it's quite a scary thing. So the challenges we've got at the moment is maintaining social distancing with customers and deliveries to the end user, which it's been brilliant actually. Everyone's been respecting that barrier as well, being cautious, because from personal experience that it's not a great illness. It's not a joke. It's quite scary. In terms of policy, we're seeing a lot of favourable policies that are coming in. So we're starting to see again a lot of cities that are implementing zero emission zones or zero air pollution zones, which is good for us. So we're able to offer savings and opportunities to have that customer get into that area without them being penalised for that as well. So we're seeing a lot of positives at the moment. We've not really seen any negatives that I can think of.
Great. Thank you so much, Daniel. That's
You're
really
welcome.
helpful. Obviously, your contact details are on that
Yeah,
slide.
sure.
So if anybody wants to get in touch.
Anyone wants to get in touch, it's
Great.
not a problem at all. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Okay, so our next speaker is Alexi from an SME called Locomizer, which is a UK startup creating a big data platform.
Hi everyone, do you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hello, my name is Alexey Polyakov, and thank you very much for inviting me to present. So I'm CEO and founder of a company from London, Locomizer. So we call ourselves the audience discovery platform, which creates a new data layer on the map, which, as you can understand, it's data about behaviors and movements of people around cities, villages, rural locations, and basically everywhere on the map. It's a perfect way, as I say, to predict the new normal. So the value of the data we provide is increasing considerably, especially after the lockdown will be eased. And I'm going to show you how we can help with fighting the pandemic, the consequences of the pandemic. But before that, I would like to tell you a little bit more what we are and what you do, so you'll have a better understanding of the technology and the data we provide. So we work with location records generated by consumers, which we take in a GDPR compliant way from mobile apps and telecoms, and we mix it with the points of interest, the data about all types of activities people can potentially use in the physical world. In our cloud operational system, create two key data sets for different applications. The first one is user profiles, basically describing the interest of people to physical points of interest, and also place profiles, where we describe the place based on the type of audiences at any given location at any given time. Take for example the typical millennium John, and I will guide you through the process of how we profile John. So once again, we take the location and time records of John, for example, during the last month or during the last 3 months. So we don't know, it's a hypothetical name. We don't know any personal information about the consumer. It's only a location history linked to an anonymized ID. And we screen it against hundreds of real-world activities like cinemas, car parking, swimming pools, golf courses, private members clubs, and family attractions, and so on and so forth. And our algorithm identify the key activities which are specific to John. For example, in this case, it's cinema, car parking, budget hotels, grocery shopping, airports, and nightclubs. What we do next with this data? So we create place profiles, as I mentioned before, or behavioral heat maps, which on the left show what is the distribution of general audience on a map. So you can see the hotspot of where the density of people and the time they spend is the highest. But on the right, it's our unique proposition where we tell where the target audience of people like John tend to spend their time, which could be broken down to an hour. So we can tell, for example, where people like John or typical millennials spend their time between 8 a.m. and 9 p.m. on Monday, a typical Monday, or on average during working hours. And these data sets are on high demand across several industry players, including retail, including advertising, and including financial services. For example, retailers who can plan the opening the new store, for example, fast food, location for fast food lovers, where the concentration of fast food lovers is the highest during the lunchtime, for example, or during the evening hours. Property developer can use this data to plan the investment in a new property in a particular location, where, for example, people with interest to family, family attractions or family clothing spend most of their time. And financial service can understand the visitation of shopping malls, for example, and by type of the people, so to predict the sales figures. Here is just a typical example. It's one of the latest projects we've done in Finland, where we asked to create the target audience with student behavior, with interest to universities, hostels, and fast food, in order to the supermarkets in Finland to plan their advertising campaign, which was aimed to increase the adoption of loyalty cards across student segment. So this is the end result of what we've done. So we chose 4 supermarkets. So we used the boundary around each of them, and we show where the student segment spend their time the most during the typical day, 24 hours. So you can see that the darker the spot, the more student-like people are around these locations. And this data was used to instruct the digital media to send the offers and messages during the times where the concentration of student-type behaviors was the highest. It was a great success. So this data published a case study. If you're interested, you can download it online. But we considerably increased the adoption of loyalty cards across students. The client was happy. And it was the first of its kind programmatic campaign in Finland. So how we help with our data to during these difficult times? I showed you just a few examples of how our data is used by research think tanks, by our clients, by press, during the beginning and up to the kind of latest week. So we helped understand how people were responding to coronavirus lockdown across the UK cities. Then we showed what was the actual distribution of people during the lockdown so that our clients were able to tailor their products and services to the new distribution of people. And then we help to monitor how the lockdown measures are working and if they're working at all. And interestingly, for example, we showed that in Scotland during the last weeks of April and beginning of May, people actually started to behave more like normal. And this is just a few figures on the which is applied to the times, which shows where the share of users outside of their home locations and what proportion of time they spent outside of their home locations. You can clearly see the trend is going up, and that's why probably the Scotland is still holding to their lockdown measures compared to the UK.
Alexi, I'm so sorry to jump in. I'm so. Oh,
Yeah.
you just finished.
Yeah,
Great.
yes, I finished.
Carry on.
So we will be happy to talk to anyone who is interested in our data. We can think about joint research projects or some pro bono work. If you're interested, just please get in touch and we'll talk with you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Could we have just one quick question, please? From Tim. If location history is anonymized, how do you identify target markets based on age or job status, such as millennials or students?
So we take the data is anonymized, but we aggregate it at the level of a map. So let's say this is a location or I don't know, zone 1 of London, and we tell the probability to find target audience is the highest in this area than in another area. So the location histories themselves are unique, but then the product it's anonymized and aggregated data.
Great, thank you. So I'm just conscious of time. Is it all right to go now to George, who is our last speaker? George is from a company called Mobito. This is a mobility startup helping businesses and cities to change their mobility data. George is currently located in Brussels, but he's keen to expand his operations to the UK.
Hi, Rebecca. Hi, everyone. Thank you for the introduction. I imagine you can see my screen now. Yes. So, as Rebecca said, we are Mobito. The name comes from Mobility of Tomorrow, and we provide a data and services platform. Particularly, we enable businesses and cities to monetize their own data and improve their offering by exchanging mobility data and services in our cloud platform. This is a slide on the problem space that we're addressing. The way we see the mobility ecosystem, we see a mess of too many single solution providers that exist in silos, often lack of data standardization, and a situation in which it's becoming increasingly complex for the different stakeholders to interact with one another and share information. Zooming into these problems, we identify 3 main pain points through our clients and our customer interactions. We hear that it's particularly hard to acquire some mobility data, and that mobility operators and other businesses resort to manual measures in doing so. Secondly, we see and we hear particular pain points for businesses to interact and exchange information with cities. So this, for example, could pertain to regulatory information that a city wants to share with a mobility operator, such as the scooter companies, as per where should they be parking the cars, their scooters, which are the bike lanes they should be using, and other such guidance that the city wants to communicate to businesses. And third, even when this destination does reach, even when this data does reach the destination, it's often in a form that makes it very hard to process. So that's exactly what our platform is trying to address by facilitating the exchange of mobility information between the various mobility stakeholders. And we do this through a suite of products that is broadly categorized in two main areas. First, our mobility data marketplace, where businesses can access raw data, but also service feeds, what we call service feeds, which are aggregated data serving particular use cases. And we can see more of that in a few slides. And second, for our city clients, we package our technology into a city mobility terminal, and we offer data intelligence and data management for city needs, which I will also break down in a few slides. So first look into our mobility marketplace. Our offering is a seamless integration, and we're really focused on the product side to create the right tools to make it as easy as possible for businesses to place data in the marketplace, but also access data from the marketplace. So here we've mapped the example of a tour operator that wants to access data feed coming from diverse sources, including cultural content, city crowdedness, but also information pertaining to museums accessibility. Normally, the tour operator would need to make 3 different integrations. With Mobito and our data marketplace, there's only one integration needed with us, and through that, we provide seamless integration to the needed data sources. Taking a step back and discussing a little bit what's the current offering and the current coverage of our platform. In terms of data categories, we've been focusing on road sensor data, city information, and pollution and weather data. Open data, which we think though is very valuable when combined with the first 2 types of data. And we chose those categories because they are synergistic and they have a overlapping client base. And in terms of the service feeds, that is the aggregated data that we devise to serve particular use cases in given industries. For examples would be the data feed we're building for a parking space optimization. And this is actually with a company we're working in the UK, and we're super excited about it. And in general, as Rebecca mentioned, excited to expand their presence here. The second case would be with the tour operator that we saw earlier. Third operation has to do with the overlap of media and mobility, working with a car advertising company to provide to them the data feed needed to contextualize their advertisement. And lastly, we're also working with navigation app to provide them with a mobility accessibility data feed. So in terms of the city mobility terminal, as we said, we offer intelligence and services that address cities' key needs. Here we see the example of a project we're doing with a municipality in Portugal. And there we've integrated with a local bus operator. We've combined that with data pertaining to local traffic and other local information, so as to be able to develop a dynamic KPI generation of the bus operator's performance evaluation for the city that we're working with. And this is one of the services we're offering today to cities. In general, the approach is we're building intelligence on top of integrated data. And I'd like to mention 3 more cases. The fact that we provide a single viewpoint and control center for the mobility data of a city. Second, during the COVID crisis, we've partnered with a sensor provider and developed an end-to-end solution for social distancing measuring. We also provide traffic management optimization, where we're looking at traffic. We combine that with local pollution metrics, and we're providing the right recommendations for local authorities to enact traffic regulation that has a maximum effect on pollution. And speaking a little bit about the team, we're a team of 7 FTs at Mobito, and we are also tapping into the resources of our mother company, another mobility company. And we're very excited to be reaching out today to you. And I urge you to, if anything that I mentioned is interesting to you, to please reach out. This is my contact information, and I'd like to speak about business opportunities, city partnerships, but also funding, as we're currently doing a seed funding round. And with that, thank you very much. and happy to answer any questions you might have.
Great. Lovely. Thank you so much, George. That's fantastic. I haven't got any questions on the chat, but again, George's contact details are there. And if you'd like to get in touch with him, please feel free to do so. I hope you can hear me. I had another message saying my internet connection is unstable. Concludes our event on the speakers side of things. Just a few closing notices from me very quickly before we finish. So the first of which is that the Catapult it has created an impact survey. We are really keen to hear about how our SME community has been affected by COVID, because really it's only by asking these sort of our services most effectively to meet the demand that's out there. So if you have a few minutes, it would be really grateful if you could complete the survey. Some upcoming events that I just wanted to flag. My colleague Julia Brady asked me to flag this with you. We have an event on innovation in sustainable food supply chains. This primarily explores how food gets from the farm to the consumer, and explores how innovation can play a part in making urban food distribution generally more sustainable. In particular, we'd like to encourage SMEs with technologies that can inject innovation into the logistics of food supply management to attend. So that's one. The second one, so continuing the sustainability theme, this event is looking at the digitization of conducting environmental impact assessments. These are legal requirements that are part of any major infrastructure project in the UK, and the idea is just basically, it's what it says on the tin. It's just to qualify, or just to assess the impact of the project on the surrounding environment. So the Catapult is part of an Innovate UK funded project to explore the digitisation and how we can make this process more seamless and straightforward. This event will look at the findings of the project so far. The third event, this will be a good one. This is to launch a white paper that the Catapult has written about creating a UTM, or an unmanned traffic management system, in the UK. The paper outlines why a UTM is required in the UK, and the Catapult's research so far, which examines how one might be implemented. So basically how we can use drones to monitor traffic flows and other critical transport related data. And very finally, our next Connections Cafe webinar will be focused on built environments, and we will be on the 17th of June. So built environment in this context broadly refers to technologies around helping cities to create innovative spaces, or perhaps you're working within the construction innovation industry, urban sustainability, or anything else to do with buildings of the future. If you would like to deliver a pitch at that event, please do get in touch with the Catapult and we may be able to offer you a pitch slot. I have had a few queries from SMEs that have attended today asking how they get involved with the Catapult, and it's a really good question. All you need to do is register your company with us and we will take it from there. So if you go to our website and click on Work With Us, there is a link to a registration form. It's not very long, just basic information about your company. We will assess it and then get back in touch with you to assess how best we can move forward with the collaboration. So that is everything. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you of course to our fantastic speakers for the day.